Really, the question that we're going to be tackling today is you're tasked as a data scientist to determine which type of notification generates the most conversions. Because there was an issue with the database design, there's no concrete way to actually attribute a purchase to a specific notification. However, you might be able to infer this data. There's a couple tables that we have, specifically notifications, notification events, and purchases. So we want to write a query to determine the conversion rate of each type of notification. Thanks for joining us, Vivian, today.
I am based in Sydney, Australia. I am a head of data role right now. Previously was a lead data scientist and spent my entire career working in data. So across finance, credit risk, borrowing capacities, customer behavior analytics, and then more recently within digital or growth marketing. Yeah, I have been working with SQL for quite a while now. Recently, I've been learning more about Python, data engineering, and then also branching into the prompt engineering and AI space. And I hope to continue to share my knowledge of SQL on the internet and inspire other people to break into the data field. Anytime I am tasked with a SQL question, or I guess any kind of business problem in my day job, I always like to look at the tables first, just so I kind of know what's in them. So it seems like we have, within the notifications table, we have ID, which I assume is notification ID, and then there is a notification type. So whether it's a promotion, a new feature, or a reminder. I'm assuming dispatched at is the timestamp that this notification was sent out. Yep, and then there's a product ID. Yep, so that is the notifications table. Let's make a note for myself. So notification contains notification ID, type, and time sent out. Okay, if we then look at notification events, I would normally do like a limit 5, but I feel like these tables are not that big, so I'll just run them all. Notification events has notification, has every ID, the timestamp that each user has clicked on this notification. So it contains the notification ID and timestamp user clicked on. And then the last table was our purchases table. Let me just query that as well. And purchases contains user ID, product ID, and what time they purchased at. Okay, so purchases would have what product, what user. I like drawing out my questions just to kind of visualize the different tables. So what do we have to do? We want the output in terms of notification type and conversion rate. We are tasked to determine which type of notification generates the most conversions, but there is no way to attribute. So we almost have to build some kind of high-level attribution model to attribute a purchase to the specific notification that was sent. So I would imagine it as if a user, say, receives 10 different notifications and they only end up purchasing after the 9th notification, we want to find a way to attribute the notification type to that specific purchase. I would probably approach it in one of 2 ways. This question kind of ties in with my role at work. We're kind of like a digital marketing, growth marketing firm, and there's a lot of like leads. So we almost want to attribute our leads to like SEO or Google Ads. So I feel like this reminds me of it. We need to build an attribution model to assign purchase, to map a purchase back to a notification that was sent out. Okay, this example, I can assume that we're going to be doing something with the purchase at time and then making sure the notification was right before, like the notification just before the time of purchase. If we're doing some kind of like last click or last touch attribution where we just attribute the purchase to the notification clicked on just before. So we're going to ignore the first or the earlier notifications clicked and just take the one right before the point of purchase. We have to write a query to determine the conversion rate of each notification. I would probably firstly calculate for each notification how many notifications, for each type of notification, how many notifications have been sent out, and then how many of those resulted in a conversion. And then I would assume conversion rate would be just a division, and then we would get the highest to order by type alphabetically. Step 1 is write some code. Need to attribute a just notification. So I'm going to look at by each user ID, which notification did they click on right before their purchase. I'm going to go select all from which one has the clicks, notification events. We'll select all from notification events. I will call this table NE for short. And then we need to join this table together with the purchases table. And I'll call this P. And purchases table has a user ID, and so does the notification events table. So I'm going to go left join on ne.user_id equals p.user_id. And that way I guess I'm connecting the purchase at timestamp with the notification click timestamp. So I want to make sure that the purchase at timestamp, so p.purchase at, this timestamp has to be greater than the notification events clicked on timestamp, just to ensure they click on it before they purchase. So I'm going to go on this. Let me just select a few columns. Let's take ne.user_id. And I want to find the biggest, like the latest timestamp. We take a maximum. I'm assuming this is in a timestamp function, like a timestamp column. So let's go maximum clicked at, and then I'm going to just call this max clicked, and then let's group by first user. I often do like group by ones, but I feel like the better way is to do that. I'm just going to run this to see what we get. So then this is giving me for every user, what is their maximum clicked on timestamp before the purchase. So now that I have the max click timestamp, I almost want to figure out for this maximum clicked timestamp, which notification did they click and what was the notification type. I'm going to turn this into I think earlier on when I was first using SQL, I would do a bunch of subqueries, but then over time when you're dealing with really big tables, it's extremely inefficient. So recently upgraded to these CTEs. I'm going to name this one as, let's just call it with maximum click time or notification. Let's call it notification clicked.
And for our audience, what does CTE stand for?
Common table expressions, I believe. It's kind of denoted by the with, like table name as.
Nice.
I'm going to format it like, not the best at formatting my code or writing in comments. I'm going to leave it like this for now. Sometimes I tab it across so I can tell. Okay, I'll leave it like this for now. So then once we have this, I almost then want to find out how many notifications were also sent out per notification type. And that would be from the notifications table, because let me scroll up, it contains the time that each notification was sent out. I'm going to create a second subquery, which should a second CTE, which I'm going to call total notifs sent. And then I'm going to populate this one in. So this one should be quite a basic table. That's purely, I'm just going to select from the notifications table. I'm going to select all from notifications. And all I want is the type and then how many times it was sent out. So I'm going to go group by n.type, and I want how many were sent out. Probably would just double check that count star and count distinct ID are the same, just because sometimes in real life there's a lot of dirty data and things are missing, or sometimes there's like duplicate IDs. I would normally do a check that these two are identical, and this is probably the better one. In this case, I feel like it doesn't really matter because we only have 5 different records in this table. Maybe I'll just use count star because it would be the same as number notifications, number notifs, and then I would group by 1. Okay, maybe I'll group by n.type. Yeah, and this would be my total notifications sent. So now that I have total notifs sent, I might just check that this is doing the correct thing and select all from total notifs sent, just to query that it's actually running. Okay, so this is giving me promotion was sent out twice, which matches here. Feature was sent out twice, and then reminder was sent out once. Okay, so I've got what I want here. Just a double check notifications clicked to make sure that this is also what I want. Yep, this is the maximum click timestamp. Okay, that's good. So now that we have these two, we now have to aggregate it together and then join, and then we need to identify what was the notification that was clicked at this timestamp. So I'm almost going to then rejoin together. I'm going to take this table here that I just created. I'm going to go select all from notifications clicked. Let's just call it NC for short. I want to join this back onto the table with the clicks, so notification events. Either left, probably could just get away with inner joining this because I only have to get one column from that table anyway. So let's go inner join notification events, and I want to join on notification clicked, whatever the maximum timestamp that we identified earlier was. So this equals ne dot, what is the column? Ne dot clicked at. And then that way I should be able to extract the notification type that was clicked. And I also want to get, what do I need to join on? Probably should join on user ID as well. And ne dot nc user ID equals ne dot user ID. Yeah, I think that should give me what I want. And what else do we need? We want to determine the conversion type of each conversion. So our output should have the notification type. So let's then left join this back onto the notifications table because we need to extract the type. So I'll go left join n on n.id equals ne dot notification ID just to get the type. And then lastly, I would then also back join onto this table that I've created, which is my total notifications sent, because we need that column. We need the number of notifications sent to calculate the conversion rate. So then I would left join on this table. Let's call this table T and S for total notifications sent. And then I would left join this on tns.pipe into the original notifications table on m.type. Can I just run this now and see if it runs? Okay, this is a mess. I need to do some kind of aggregation. So I need to aggregate for the conversion rate of each type of notification. So I need to get notification type, and then I need some kind of calculation of how many of them actually converted versus how many of them. Let me just do a count start here. And then let me do a number of notifications sent. And then I'm going to do a 1 and then see how we go with this. Okay. Unknown column. Oh, see what we have. Okay, so now that I've gotten, this is giving me the total of, yeah, that is good because of this inner join. And then I also have total number of notifications sent. Okay, so I'm just gonna now turn this into what the output is asking for, which would be this divided by that as the conversion rate, which I think is what they want, notification type. And then I'm gonna group by, I guess, n.type. And then they also want it to be, let me just run this now and see if it's what we want. Okay, yeah, is this what we want? We do, yeah, okay. And then they also want it to be ordered alphabetically, ordered by number of type. By default, it should be ascending, but I will just put it in there anyway and then see if this is what we want to be getting. Yeah, I think this should match the output. Awesome. One of the things that I would probably go through in this is just adding comments just to ensure that the user following along, even me reading this code in a day's time, knows what it's talking about. And I probably could make this code a little bit more efficient with using some kind of like partition by, maybe we'll try that now actually. I can like never remember the syntax of any kind of partition by statements. No matter how many times I use it, I can never remember it. So what do we need here? If we were to calculate this without creating this timestamp, I might copy this code because I feel like this solution would work. If there's any way I could make it a little bit more efficient, I'm gonna just comment this out before.
I believe the code editor should give you the time it took to run the code as well, if I'm not wrong. If you look at stats as well or details.
There you go.
Execution time. Yeah.
Let's see if it actually does anything. I guess that one was 747.
7, yep.
Seconds. If I were to not use it, what would I do? I would take I'm going to have to think about this out loud. If I were to use some kind of partition by, I would be partitioning by the ID of some sorts, and I would be ordering by some kind of timestamp, and it would be descending because I would take the largest. Okay, I'm going to try rewrite this part of my code. Maybe I'll keep this in here, keep the max click timestamp, and then we would need to take sorting the clicked timestamp by descending. So if we're taking any where the purchase at is greater than the clicked at, then I would take the first value of the notification, ID, and then I would partition this by user ID ordered by clicked timestamp descending. Clicked at, is that the column? Yeah, clicked at descending. I would then have to, you know what, I'm going to get rid of all of this for now just so I can run it. Take user ID, first value notification ID over, partition by user ID, order by that clicked as descend as notif. Okay, I'm going to try this and see if I guess doing it via this line of code would then save us from having to left join it back on and then creating this max timestamp and then left joining back onto this table. We probably could just cut this out for now. If I pop this here and then delete this part, what would we have? We'd have first value as notification clicked, and then we probably wouldn't have to then inner join this code, right? I delete that. Does that work? Now that I've gotten rid of that, I could just use this notification ID. Maybe I'll name it notification ID clicked. And then from here, I could then just join on from this clicked, joining onto notifications. If I just replace this, which would be wrong one. Does that work? I'm just gonna run it and see what happens. It's
Yep.
probably gonna. Oh, okay, that actually works. All right. Let me just check. Okay, this is a little bit faster.
Nice.
I never
Yep.
check execution time because my code sometimes takes like half an hour to run at work. I just let it go. Oh, that part was stressful. I think this is it. I'm just gonna double check everything again. We don't even need this max click timestamp if we're doing the partition approach, but
Yep.
I'll just send it out for now.
Yep. So while you're checking, is it also possible to check if there's notifications that have been sent to users that have already purchased the product, or do notifications stop once a purchase happens?
Are there any notifications from users who have already purchased?
Yeah. Basically, what I'm trying to understand is, does the system today do a good job of stopping, do notifications keep getting sent out to people that have already purchased, or do they stop once a purchase happens?
Right, okay. So let me comment out all this now, and we should see. So we should have the table P. So I'm going to select user ID, and then actually right now there's only one per user ID. Just go max. Just we could do this a lot easier, but and then we want to see, are there any notifications being sent out? Are there any notifications being dispatched? It will be this table then. Notifications, user ID. That's the notification that's being sent out. We might even need, because the notifications table doesn't have any form of user ID, so we'll still need to join back onto the notification events table
To get the user ID. Yep.
yeah, it doesn't tell us which one it was sent out to. So I'm going to need to join notification event m.id equals me.notification ID. And then I want to left join this back onto the purchase timestamp, the table I just created for that p.user ID equals me.user ID. And I want to select if there's any cases. So let's see if this works. Case when we're trying to get, are there any outlier cases where notifications are still being sent out even after purchase? So case when purchase stamp is less than
the notification timestamp. That's right.
This one, purchase m dot dispatch timestamp. Sum this up every time that there is an example. Let's go then one else zero end. So basically, if there's any match, if there's any purchases happening before the dispatch timestamp, then add it up. Number of delayed notifs. I'm gonna try run this, and it should be 0, right? I'm assuming in this example there is no outliers.
And that's what we're seeing. Number of delayed notifications is 0. Okay,
and
awesome.
I guess no need to put it in this. I could just shove that here, I guess. But having the CTE makes it easier to read. I'll undo all that. I'll just keep it there. Yeah. But yeah,
Okay,
that's
awesome.
another good question. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, this was great. I think it went really well. Do you have any thoughts before I go into, I think, what you did really well in this interview?
No, not really. Coding on the spot is stressful.
It's always stressful. Yeah, exactly. And I think we'll go back to this topic because I think it'll be helpful for the audience to understand like what your mindset was when you fell into that sticky situation. So first of all, great job. I like the idea that you looked at the tables first just to get a perspective, like just to get your feel. And then you also, what I appreciated was that you limited the number of rows in the output to save time. What often interviewers don't realize is, or interviewees don't realize is like they're on the clock. It's always helpful to save a couple seconds when you can. And it's a simple thing just by limiting the number of rows that you see. I also liked how you commented as you went down the code. And because often it's like, it's very easy to like leave comments until the very end. And then you kind of have to like read your code all over again and go through the thought process. So it's actually much easier to just type out what you're thinking right there and then. And I really appreciated how you kept like explaining what your thinking was. And then if I wanted to jump in as an interviewer to correct anything, I could. And you always kind of had that, you were giving me an insight instead of just like quietly coding. I think it'll be helpful for our audience to really understand when you fell into that specific spot where you said, oh, things got messy. And it's like, oh, I'm not sure what to do here. How did you get yourself out of it? What was going on in your head?
Yeah, I think it went messy when I selected all from a table, and then every column just kind of, when I was left joining onto multiple tables, and I guess it was just like a mess of columns. Was that the scenario you were talking about?
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes I just panic a little internally. And I guess it's like nothing wrong with that. So I feel like being stressed in an interview is quite natural maybe. Sometimes the code is just going to error, or sometimes one time I raised a production ticket because I thought the database was broken when I had a typo in my table name. But I feel like I would tell the audience that it's actually quite a normal feeling. So don't like run away from that, but almost like don't let
Right.
that consume you, because it is so natural. Like half the time I find coding like a trial and error process. The amount of times that I go through, I run a query and it errors, and sometimes I'm overlooking the smallest thing.
Mm.
But in a situation like that, I would definitely remove the select star and then maybe even just join on two, because right now I think earlier maybe I was joining on three tables together, or even four, because I had the other table I created as well. Possibly just join on two of them and sense check if it's what you want, and maybe try to visualize and just walk through a step by step. What is your code actually doing? Maybe toss the order bys, or just extract like one column from every table and do a count to make sure you're not like aggregating too many duplicates. Sometimes I forget to say join on a user ID, and then everything kind of blows up. So really just going through your code line by line and then breaking it down, and just not being afraid to comment things out, and I guess just run little bits at a time to make sure it's doing what you want it to do.
Nice. So I think debugging is always going back. It can be in
Mm.
an interview setting, it's always stressful because you have that someone watching you, right? Is it right to recommend here that for people who struggle with something like this, is practice the only way, or are there other strategies that you would also recommend?
Oh, I personally think practice does make perfect. Although growing up, I was always someone who I would never do, this is probably off topic, but I would never do like tests in test condition, because I learned well from looking at other people's solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I feel like if you're just too overwhelmed by the thought of doing more questions, maybe even reading other people's coding solutions. I know Interview Query has a
Mm-hmm.
good feature where can I click here? I'll click here. Where
Yep.
you can do
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
other users' submissions, and you can kind of see what their thought process was. Sometimes I guess that helps. I think one other thing that's pretty important is structuring the code in a way that is intuitive. Because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've seen, actually I'm also guilty of it myself, but I've seen code that kind of runs across the page, and
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
I can't follow it.
Being able to view line by
Yeah.
line as opposed to like having it run across. Yep.
Yeah, I think readability is quite important because it really helps, I guess,
Nice.
detangle it. I know the internet is very divided on this, but I'm keen
Mm-hmm.
to see what the audience thinks. I am a comma before
Tabs.
only because I can easily comment out a line and I don't have to.
Yeah.
Because if I had it here, then I have to move the comma and then comment out the new line. So I go down the page like this. But I think just like having the code readable and adding your own comments and kind of
Mm-hmm.
visualizing it. Sometimes if I'm a pen and paper person, sometimes I'll draw things out and just make sure I'm joining on the right column at the right time. I like to look at other people's coding solutions.
I really liked how you actually went back to add comments as well once you were done, because there's also like, and assuming this is because you had enough time, but like it's often important to also understand, like, while this is an interview, you are being evaluated for the potential work product you could be doing at the workplace as well. And a big portion of that is, can another person coming in from nothing understand what you wrote? So comments are actually really, really important for that. And I'm glad you went back and did that. And I did like the fact that we went back and like you went back and actually said, hey, like, can we make this code any better? Can I improve it? While like interview query has the runtime, the time associated with it. In
Time,
a
yeah.
normal setting, you may not have that number itself, but even having the thought of going back and, having the ability to improve it, it often helps.
Yeah, and I find
Um,
doing that so
yeah.
much actually, because a lot of the time, if you're
Hmm.
tasked with say like a business problem, like if this was a business question from an exec, and I'm almost
Hmm.
just desperate to get some numbers out, say by like a 10 a.m. meeting, then I would just write some really messy code that kind of, my old manager would call it quick and dirty. So she's
Hmm.
like, just write some
Hmm.
quick and dirty code, get the answer out of the way. And if it's something that needs to be, I guess, productionized or run on like a monthly basis, then I would go back and I guess try to work on efficiency and fix up the joins, right? Otherwise, I could have written like a really sloppy code that kind of does it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
always go back if it needs to be productionized. I would then make it more efficient.
Yeah, and for our audience, I think, you may not have the time, or you may be struggling with like getting the code out and working first. And so while, efficiency is important, it's first important to get it to a working stage.
Yeah.
And even the question of, should I go back and make this more efficient, is
Mm,
good enough to show to the interviewer that yes, you care to go back and improve the code that you've written.
mm,
It's just And I think that's the intent that counts there. Yeah, and I really liked how you handled the kind of the curveball that I threw at you, because our community was
Okay.
also asking about that
Yeah.
around our notifications being sent after the fact. So if there's any additional business questions that also come to your mind once you've written the initial code, feel free to also ask and have the conversation with the interviewer. It's like,
Mm.
hey, are there any other ways that I can kind of improve the system? Any other queries that I can write that will help you better the decisions that you're making? Because
Yeah.
ultimately these queries are being written to inform business decisions. So I
And so
think
yeah.
overall, great job. And any advice, the folks watching this content,
Honestly,
and
don't be afraid
yeah.
to Google. I do it so much. Actually, now I sometimes I go to ChatGPT and I'm like, fix my partition by statement because I just never remember. This one I did at work like 2 days ago, so I'm still kind of familiar, but don't be afraid to look up Stack Overflow. Just honestly, if you have a coding bug, Googling, there's nothing wrong with looking up. Sometimes I look up the most basic things, like how do I extract the date part of this timestamp? I guess my advice is keep your own code clear and logical so it's easy to follow. Explore everything if you're a visual person, if you want to write things out, if you want to type things out, know what the tables look like. Don't just kind of jump in and solve the question straight away. Don't be afraid, because if I had jumped in and tried to calculate a conversion rate without creating any of these other interim tables, it might have gotten, I guess, more difficult. So you kind of go step by step and just test around, play around with the different tables and kind of talk yourself through it in a way that you find the most logical. I guess in this question, one might also say, because in like a real life scenario, if someone has say viewed 100 different notifications before a purchase, or if they had 100 different like e-commerce sessions before a purchase, you would using the last, because right now we're using the max, like the
Yep.
latest timestamp clicked, right? Sometimes that might not be the most appropriate as well. And that
Hmm.
could be worth, if this was a business context, it could be worth raising with your organization. It's like, hey, do you want me to explore like weighted every single notification equally? So
Hmm.
if someone has say viewed 5 different, if someone's clicked on 5 things, like
Hmm.
possibly all 5 of those kind of shaped them into thinking about the product, as
Hmm.
opposed to just giving credit to the very last one. Like maybe, yes, that last 50% off notification did like kind of push you over the line, but maybe there was more like brand awareness or other things in the user journey that you don't capture by just using the last touch. So
Hmm.
maybe you
Hmm.
or like a more mix or like a linear or some kind of like weighting them differently, like a mixed attribution model. That could also be something that you wanted to look into. But I think for our example where we only have 5 users and 5 purchases, then maybe it's not as important.
Okay, awesome. And I
Mm.
think I like the idea about going into solutions and looking at what folks have as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes those solutions can actually feel overwhelming as well. So something that I also
Mm.
started doing was just like copy pasting the solution into ChatGPT and helping and just asking, can you explain what the logic of this is?
100%.
Um,
It's like, what is this piece of code doing? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what is it
Yeah.
doing? So it's always really helpful. And ChatGPT is literally your best friend as a
Mm.
developer, I find. Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. And I guess we'll see folks at our next discussion with our next set of interviewers. So thanks for having us. And yeah, just a shout out to the interview query platform. It's as a data scientist or even as a data analyst and even as product managers, it's a great resource to go and test your understanding of data and even coding, or even just having a better data understanding to like test yourself regularly. It's a great place to go. And as you can see, it's quite built out. So great stuff there.
100%. And I might just add to that a little bit. When I was like trying to practice interview questions before, when I had like technical roles earlier in my career and I had to interview, I would always Google like SQL interview questions and answers because I never really knew what to expect. And I
Hmm.
don't think I looked at any like additional platforms or even watch any YouTube videos because I would have been aware of this platform. But I would like go through, I don't remember any of their websites, but they were all just questions, but there was no way for me to actually practice my coding.
Hmm.
And there was no way I could actually see like real interview questions myself. So I feel like this platform would really help people and myself included because I'm trying to upskill more in Python these days. But just being able to have a platform and have like an interface that I can run and test things in, I really do appreciate that.